Thank you for dropping in today to the Learn to Engage Learning and Development blog. Today is a special interview because it's live and we have a special guest with us, Dawne Hanks, owner of Eliminate Girl Hate. With over 2 decades of experience as a brand and marketing strategist, Dawne Hanks has journeyed across the globe, delving into the intricacies of human behavior and gaining a profound global perspective, both in the spotlight and behind the scenes. Renowned for award winning work with influential brands such as Nike, Oakley, TEDx Youth, University of San Francisco, and Girls Inc. PNW. Dawne has had the privilege of witnessing the transformative power of authentic storytelling and genuine curiosity on individuals and organizations. As the founder of Eliminate Girl Hate, Dawne is committed to providing advocacy, consulting, and coaching to both men and women who share a common goal to build a more equitable world for women and girls. Dawn's passion for fostering positive change and eliminating gender bias shines through in every aspect of her work, making her a powerful voice for progress and equality. And now her focus is on shining a light on the voices of others. Welcome, Dawn.
Thank you. What a lovely introduction.
You're welcome. Well, thank you so much for being here. You are quite the busy bee with a lot on your plate, from marketing to coaching and, most importantly, empowering others. What gets you out of bed in the morning? I mean, gosh, you have so many different things going on. What are you most passionate about?
Honestly, just making the world a better place for women and girls by, creating safe and equitable spaces so that they can do their best work and do the things that they want to do.
That's really inspiring. I read something in one of your blog posts about helping people live in their purpose.
Yeah.
I hear that term a lot. Can you define that in your own words for our listeners?
There are all sorts of the ways that the world will tell us what that means. But for me, it's about doing things without fear and doing them without the voice of others in your head.
Mm,
Yeah.
that could mean,
So much.
yeah. And that purpose could be, you could be referring to personal or
Yes.
professional.
Yeah, and I think that's where we miss the boat a lot is we talk about purpose in such a way that people think it has to be this big grandiose thing, but in reality purpose means different things to different people. And at the
Exactly.
end of the day, it's just about following your heart to do the work that
Yes.
you're supposed to do.
And for me, it was, my purpose was professional.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm going to say my purpose was thwarted by circumstances in corporate America.
Of
Uh,
course.
I left corporate America in 1996 because I was frustrated with trying to advance. The job always went to a Caucasian male or a relative of one of the executives, as well as a little discrimination,
Of course.
that I also went through. So that's when I left corporate America and started GC Learning Services, which is now Learn to Engage. So you have some experience with corporate America as well, don't
Yeah.
you?
Yes. Uh, Quite frankly, it's a very similar story. I worked really hard and when I talk about purpose, the reason I talk about it the way that I do is sometimes we get confused about what it is. And
Mm,
oftentimes when we're in a corporate environment, we're just going after the next thing. And
Mm.
because we think that's the only path to take, when in reality, that's not it.
Yes.
And I was in a meeting and an executive said, "Why do we keep hiring women in leadership positions when we're a men's company?" And
Mm.
it was there are lots of things that happen. You said that as well, that you're like, "Wait a
Mhm.
minute, what?" But that
Yes.
that moment for me was the opening. It
Mm.
was like, "I'm done. I can't do this." And I did leave that job and started my own business, and look, I play back and forth in corporate America because at the end of the day, you gotta pay your bills, right?
Yeah.
But this idea that I would fit my round, curvy self into a square, rigid box was not gonna work for me anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Kudos to you and kudos to me because I I
Yes.
also came to that realization. So yeah. Um
And I'm also
but-
aware that there is some privilege in making that decision.
yes.
Um, and hence the reason I keep bouncing back and forth to corporate, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and so that isn't the right decision for everybody. And sometimes I question if it was the right decision for me because this is hard, but it if I can help other people navigate the situations that I did around
Yes.
gender and limitation, then I
Yes.
know I'm doing something that means something to me and that's worthwhile. And at this age, that just seems to be more important.
Yeah. And you've been um in leadership and you've worked with leadership. You have friends that are probably still in leadership.
Yeah.
How would you define the roles for men and women?
Mm. You know, leadership is a very overused word.
Yeah.
When I think about leadership, for me, it is about empowerment of others. If
Hmm.
you are going to lead, it is about getting the best out of the people that are kind of under your guidance.
Hmm.
And I don't think that should be different for men and women, but traditionally it has been.
Hmm.
And you tend to see, and this is not in all cases, I don't want to broad stroke this, but you tend to see less empathetic leaders
Hmm.
with men because they haven't been given permission or grace to do that.
Hmm.
And that isn't the example that has been shown to them. And so, as we kind of forge our way into new generations
Hmm.
teaching us how to be better, I think that is coming more to the forefront as we
Hmm.
understand and know more about leadership. But I've always said, no matter what my job is, I'm as a marketing director, only 15% of that job is actually about marketing. The the
Hmm.
other 85% is about getting the best work out of the people that are there and
Right.
helping guide them where they want to be and where they need to be so that they can do that. Because when we're all doing our best work, the
Hmm.
companies grow regardless.
Hmm.
Threatening, demanding, putting weird rules and punishments in place isn't what
Yes.
motivates people long term, excuse me, and sustainably.
Yeah.
Empowering people does.
Now you almost touched on something. Gonna just I'm gonna just go there. You talked about empathy,
Ye
but there's another E word that
Yeah,
sometimes comes up as it relates to women in leadership. It's a negative, what
yep,
I consider it negative, and
yep,
that's emotional.
yeah.
Um, why? Why is that negative?
The really horrible answer is because it's associated with women.
Mm,
The more maybe thoughtful
ouch.
answer is because people get uncomfortable being a witness to the pain of others, and especially when they don't understand it.
Mm,
For most of us, when we were young, whether you're girl or boy, you were told to stop crying, to
mm,
wipe your face, to get over it, right? And so it's been conditioned in us to believe that emotionality is a weakness.
mm,
But we're learning so much in the mental health space, right? And we're learning about what the suppression of emotions does. And we're
mm,
also learning that emotions doesn't equal crying. And
Right.
that is something that just it really chaps my hide, is
Mhm.
because women are often called emotional because their emotion comes in the form of tears.
Right.
Men are just as emotional. It just shows up in different ways, right? And so all of this suppression of emotion has created illness in the global culture where we've
Yes.
got both physical and mental illness. It's manifested in violence, war, crime,
Yes.
loneliness, despair, and even death. And so, men may express emotionality different. And so I think it is incumbent on us to change the definition of what is considered emotional. And
Yeah.
so often that means calling out people who express it in forms other than crying.
Mm. I just thought about people who, well, in two cases, so children who are bullied and then they hold all that in and then come back and shoot, people in
Mhm.
school. It's the same thing with adults.
Yes.
They hold everything in, they're upset that they were let go from the job
Yep.
and then come back to the job and with violence. I just thought about that when you were
Yeah.
talking about just holding it in and no one wants to talk about it.
And instead of talking about it, we coin new terms like going postal,
Yeah,
right?
exactly,
Instead of
exactly,
addressing what might bring a person to that situation.
exactly.
And how can we solve for that? Because when you live in a capitalistic environment, everything is about the dollar that's coming in.
Right.
And we are misinformed that in order to get the dollar to come in, we've got to hustle.
Yeah,
Hustle is such a word that we glorify in American culture,
yes,
and we're learning the damage that that glorification has done for us.
yes. When I think about the benefits in corporate America for leadership, I remember, monetary benefits, I remember
Mhm.
or incentives, I should say. I remember retreats.
Mhm.
I remember, wellness, um, folks that came into the building for massages and
Yeah.
right? But
Yep.
we never had any type of counseling available,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
It was never the only thing that we had was EAP if you
Yep.
wanted to report something. Um,
Yes. And
yeah,
you had, like, Enneagram and strength finders and
right.
these things about understanding how people do their best work, right?
Yes.
But when those things happened in a manager group, the
Mhm,
the ownership was
mhm,
on us as the
mhm,
individuals
mhm,
to understand it. But the
mhm.
corporate culture
Right.
very rarely used those findings to
Mm.
change anything about the way they did business.
Wow, that is so true. Okay,
Mhm.
before we get too deep,
Yeah,
let's switch gears for a second. I want to get your take on I guess characteristics, doesn't matter the gender,
yeah,
of a good leader or
sure.
effective.
Well, I'm always gonna start with, empathy and vulnerability.
Yes.
The ability to allow people to see where you have fallen and what
Yes.
you've learned from it. And then
Mhm.
that goes into resilience, the ability to show that you took a shot, you missed, you fell down, but you got back up and rebounded the next shot.
Yes.
The ability to empower others, and
Mm,
the ability to do the work and let or allow others to help you get there and not being ashamed of needing help in a
yeah.
leadership role.
I'm actually working on a training course where um, they talk about that as far as
Mhm.
delegating to others and why not delegating to others is a fail. It doesn't
Yeah.
work. And so I
It's
totally
actually
get
why a lot of companies are downsizing right now, in my opinion.
yes, yes.
Is, I was very lucky to have a boss who was very adamant about delegation, and
Mm,
that if you were at a certain level of leadership, there were just certain things that you shouldn't be doing. And
mm,
if you were doing them because you were like, well, it's just easier to do it myself, then
mhm,
you were not utilizing your skill sets and roles well, right? So we
mm,
always had this thing where I would say, uh, you pay me fine, but you definitely pay me way too much
mm,
to do that. You
mm,
don't pay me too much, but you pay me too much to do that. And that's why we
mm.
have the levels, the hierarchy, or the roles that we have in an organization,
Right,
is that so that
exactly.
everybody is one of the tools we're using to get there. And if you're jumping into an area that you shouldn't be into and not trusting your team or not delegating that work out, you're going to get to burnout and you're not going to be the leader. Uh, and that doesn't mean you don't help somebody when they're struggling or their bandwidth is low. That's not what that means. But it is also about understanding. And, if you look at job roles that are listed right now,
Mm,
they
mm.
now list like 300 things that you need to do. And
Yes,
that is absolutely ludicrous because it is
it
just not doable.
is.
And
No.
it prevents the machine from working the way that it should.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know why that is. That's a good point. It's really too much for
Yeah.
one person.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just have to pat myself on the back because I was that person. I said to myself, um, I can just do this. It only
Mhm.
take me a minute,
Yep.
or whatever, but it doesn't. It doesn't take a minute. It takes hours
Yeah.
away from what I could be doing to make money for the business.
Yep.
And so this week I started with a virtual assistant and I handed off all my administrative stuff to her. Yay!
That is a huge win, especially for someone, and I'm projecting here, but who may or may not be a control freak or who may or may not be a perfectionist, right?
Perfectionist.
That ability to bring people in to help you, one,
Yeah.
is really good for you, your bandwidth, your
Yes.
burnout, all of those things.
Yes.
But it also allows you the ability to coach somebody else
Mm,
and to learn from somebody else.
yes.
And those are all great things. And I
Yeah.
think they're even more so when you're a solopreneur or a small
Yes.
business owner, because the thing I miss the most is the team. It is learning from other people. So
Right.
I brought in a team in February, and it's been the
Mhm.
best thing I could have possibly done for the
Yes.
business.
And you mentioned coaching, an
Mhm.
opportunity to coach others.
Yeah.
Um, what are a couple of things that, you can coach them on that would be important to them
So
as a leader?
what I have been finding in the last, I'll say 15 years, is
Mhm.
that there are 3 things that seem to be lacking that used to be very prevalent. Well, I'm gonna
Mm,
say 2 of them were very prevalent.
okay.
So one of them is ideation and brainstorming.
Right.
We have created a world in which, because everything is at your fingertips,
Mhm.
we've stopped using our imagination in business.
Okay.
And there are so many people that when I'll be in a corporate setting, I'll have the team come in and I was like, okay, let's just think of some ideas. There are no bad ideas. Let's put some things on the board.
Right.
And oftentimes I notice people just frozen.
Mm,
Like this idea of doing it on the fly and potentially being wrong, being made fun of, or being
mm,
chastised. There's such a fear around that we're losing a lot of good ideation because of that. So, one
mm,
is really training your team or coaching your team on how to ideate freely and
right,
brainstorm and be
right.
okay with bad ideas. The second one I would say is rebounding. I'm a big basketball girl. The Indiana Pacers just advanced. I'm very excited about that. And no, I'm not from Indiana. I just fell in love with Reggie Miller and Jalen Rose back in the day and been a diehard ever since. Um, But it's that idea of rebounding. So corporate culture has told us, on one hand, it's okay to fail, and then we get laid off and fired when we fail in even the smallest way. And
Yes.
so changing the way that we lead our teams to not only encourage failure,
Mhm,
but to then dissect the failure, to learn from it
mhm.
and rebound that ball, because
Right.
shooting the ball is great. We need points to win the game.
Mhm.
But it is not offense that wins games, it's defense.
Right.
It's how quickly you get up and try again. You've got all those quotes around Michael Jordan and how many shots he missed and blah, blah, blah. I'm not gonna repeat all those here, right? But that idea of rebounding is so important, and we have
Yes.
created a culture of people who get devastated by the smallest of failures because the world has told them that you can't fail.
And that comes in, that's a leadership,
Yes.
uh, I would
Problem.
say a main role that
Yes.
you're supposed to be a coach
Yep.
and be facilitative, instead of directive.
Yes.
And so you're supposed to encourage, ask their opinion about how they can improve,
Yeah.
and do follow ups,
Yeah.
um,
Because
support.
if you don't, you have a very homogenous culture,
Yes.
because you're asking these individuals, right? We make them go through 20 flipping rounds of interviews now because we're looking for this unicorn, right? And then we get a unicorn and we make them act like a goat. And it's like, what are we doing, right? Like, I want the sparkles and the colors and the rainbows and all those things that you
Right,
have that I
right,
don't have. I got
right.
enough goats, right? And it's such
Yep,
a way of tampering creativity and
yeah,
breaking people down, and that's not what we want to do.
yeah, yeah. And I think I interrupted you. You were gonna say
No.
something else about a trait of a leader, or how you
Oh,
would
no,
treat
the last
leaders.
one we've kind of already talked about, it's empathy. It's
Oh
being
gosh,
able
yes.
it's being able to put yourself in there and say, "Wow, that must have been really difficult. How can I
Yes,
support you? How can I," like, the number one question I ask is, "How
yes,
can I be in service of you today?" And
yes.
as leaders, bosses, managers, whatever word you want to use to describe it, we
Mhm.
have forgotten how to be in service of others.
Yes.
And I just think that's really important, because by doing that,
Mm,
you also are in service of yourself.
yes. And that's one of the main things that's missing
Yes.
from leaders in corporate America is that empathy, compassion.
Yeah.
What else do you think is missing? Anything else I'm
Think,
not highlighting?
right now, there's also this failure of leadership to I think COVID showed us this.
Mm,
Everybody was trying to move so fast
mhm,
that they really left people out of the equation. You're seeing all of these layoffs right now.
mm,
These layoffs are not because employees didn't do good work, and
right,
they are not because they failed.
right.
They are because of poor business planning.
Yes.
And yet they're keeping their jobs, they're keeping their bonuses,
Yeah.
they're
Mm,
keeping all of that, and these people are coming out and saying, "Hey, you can keep your job and everything will stay the same, but we're gonna give you a lower title and less salary."
yeah.
How does that help somebody? How
Yeah.
does that engage them to do their best work? Because
Mm,
your planning was poor. And
yes.
likely your planning was poor because you didn't go and ask the questions you needed to ask
That's
of the
right.
people that are actually doing the work.
That's right. They
And
probably
it's
didn't
sad.
delegate either,
Exactly,
properly.
right? So now when you do that, now the person is doing the job of 4 people because you just laid off 3 others, but
Yes.
they're doing it for less money, for
Mm.
less benefits, for a lower title, but they're supposed to buck up and smile and
Yeah.
just be happy they
Yeah.
have a job, right? And then we wonder
Mm.
Why the things that happened with COVID and after COVID happened. We
Yes.
wonder why this generation is disgruntled with the system,
That's right.
and it's like you look at other cultures, you look over at Japan and China and all the public services that they offer, or you look
Yes.
at Denmark where your education is paid for and your healthcare is paid for. And
Mm.
we can argue politically about all of that, right?
Yeah.
But what we now know is that if you are worried about meeting your basic needs,
Mm.
food, water, shelter,
Yes.
you cannot be mentally healthy. And
Yeah.
if you are not mentally healthy, you
Mhm.
cannot do your best work because our organizations do not support that.
Yes.
If someone has cancer, we Google it. How
Mhm.
can I help them? What can I get them for chemo? If
Right.
someone has a nervous breakdown or a mental break or stress, anxiety, we don't Google it.
No, we label them.
We label it. Yeah, it's
Well,
sad.
Dawn, I'm not, I don't have powers or anything, but if I could wave a magic wand, how would you fix this?
Some people are going to roll their eyes when I say this because you're right. There's no magic wand.
Nope.
Or, as I would say, there's no magic wand more powerful than storytelling. And
Mm.
storytelling has been used very buzzily lately. And I don't even know if buzzily is a word. Um, but, there's a quote that says that storytellers are the architecture of culture. And I
Mhm.
really believe that because as humans, we communicate through story, we learn from story, we evolve through story. But
Mhm.
for much of our history as humans, the only stories being told widely were that of one group of people,
Yes.
white men. And
Mhm.
so, if we want to fix what is wrong, we have to talk about it in a way that invites empathy and compassion for the human condition.
Right.
And we have to hear all the voices,
Yeah.
not a select few. And so by telling our stories, we saw this during COVID. We saw it with George Floyd, right? We saw it with Black Lives Matter. We saw it with Me Too. When
Mhm.
people raise their voices and all of a sudden you can say, wait, that happened to you too? Or something similar
Yes.
happened to you and you're okay?
Mm.
How did you do that? What can I learn from that and take and advance this, right? And
Mm.
it's not just about telling our stories. It's about believing the stories that other people tell
Yes.
and using, whether you're in leadership, a manager, or you're someone in power,
Mhm.
using the stories of other who do not have a platform or a microphone to change our structures and our systems to
Mhm.
better serve the people of the world, which is grandiose and
Yes.
lofty. And like I said, people may roll their eyes, but until we open the door for those conversations, nothing changes.
I totally agree. And I think that if we didn't even have the titles, CEO, vice president,
Hmm.
executive of sales, whatever the title is, and we looked at each other as human beings,
Yes.
then we would be able to see a bit more clearly, and also, recognize that, oh my goodness, you went through the same thing I did.
Yes. Yes.
I
And the
never
fact that we need that, it's so telling, right? That unless you went through something I did, I can't possibly be compassionate or empathetic to you, right? I was watching a show last night and the son in the show
Mhm.
leads a lifestyle that his mother and father don't agree with, right?
Oh,
And a lot of it is based in religion and things
right,
of that nature. And as they're talking about it, and they're talking about it with a religious leader, and
right,
the parents used the religious teaching to justify their position,
right.
this religious leader stopped them
Mhm.
and said, look, we can translate these teachings 10 ways to Sunday.
Right,
But at the end of the day, what these teachings teach us the most is about acceptance,
right.
not judgment. And I loved that a leader in a position that could rely on a thousands-year-old book with no
Right,
context
right.
could have lent themselves to perpetuating hate and judgment that they didn't, and that
Mm,
they said, "Look, you might not agree with it, but you have to accept unconditionally
that's right.
this person you love or care
Right,
about, or it doesn't work." And it's
exactly.
similar in our work environments. It
Oh,
is about unconditionally
100%.
yeah, unconditionally accepting people to show up authentically.
That's right. And what are you doing to help them to be
Yes.
their best self?
Yes, because if they are their best self, your company, your organization, your department is
Yes.
also going to rise.
Dawn, do you have any advice to women in corporate America that are trying to get into a leadership position or even start their own business where they would have a team to lead?
I would say become the best rebounder in the game.
Mm,
Learn from other rebounders, right? Get mentors
mm,
and do not copy, emulate, or
mm,
mirror those mentors.
mm,
Take the things that work for who you are and elevate them.
mm,
And then take the things that don't work for you are, throw them away so your focus is not being taken away. And then invite others to help you. Ask for
mm,
help, whether that be a mentor,
mm,
whether that be somebody that can teach you something new, and
mhm,
then remember that you are worthy of being in all spaces and places, no matter what anybody says. And
mm,
if you do not have the people that are telling you that, lifting you up and then supporting you,
mhm.
go find them because they are out there and we grow in community. So find the community that takes care of you and lifts you up. And if you don't know where to find them, give me a call.
I love it. So that's our final note. Remember that you are worthy.
Yeah.
If you are in a leadership position, most important question that Dawn reiterated today, how can I be of service? How can I help you? How can I support you? Great stuff, so powerful. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today. How can people find out more about you online?
They can go to eliminategirlhate.com. That is our website. We're
Mhm,
currently changing a few things around, but it's still
mhm,
good.
mhm,
You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn under Eliminate Girl Hate. And then
mhm.
our podcast is called Wait, Hold Up, What? And it is on Spotify and Apple, but we also have details of it on our website and on our Instagram.
Fabulous. All of this will be posted on the blog. And I just want to thank you so much again for joining me today and letting me talk to you. It's been fabulous.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. And I'm so humbled that you would have me here and that I can learn from you as well and everything that you've done with your businesses. It's quite a journey.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Until next time.